election certification. It's November 14th, 2024. The time is 2:01 p.m. In attendance are Commissioners Matari, Brooks, and Duncan, with Commissioner Brooks on the phone. Are there changes to the agenda? All right. I'm just going to state that I have a headache, and if I say I need to take a recess, please bear with me. I will call for public comment now and at the end of the presentation. We'll be limited to 3 minutes. I do have a 3 o'clock meeting to go to if we are not finished by then. So with that, I will call for public comment. Okay, so if you want to come to the, you need to come to a microphone.
My name is Teresa Roth, and I would just like to know if you and Mr. Matari got, and Jennifer, you got it?
It would have been nice if you reached out beforehand.
Okay. Did both you get a copy of the email I sent?
I read the email.
And you, Mr. Matari?
I saw the email. I honestly have not had a chance to go through it closely and digest it.
I will give it to you. That is the email. And there is a website. If you guys have seen the email, there's very little more for me to say. I'm just going to maybe talk for a minute to introduce myself. I've been involved in the voter integrity group on and off for 3 years and have looked into various other aspects. My background is electronics, computer science, and computers. I'm actually an electrical engineer, and I have a very good understanding of the potential for fraud in electronic voting machines. When I was following this election, not even very seriously, I didn't, the minute the results were announced, I saw red flags. The number of ballots that were being presented, 34,000, didn't make sense because it was obviously a mix and sort of an arbitrary mix of early and absentee votes. And they were not broken out, so you couldn't see what the early votes were. If I had seen what the early results were, which were extremely favorable to KCRCC candidates, to the almost 59 to 41%, I would have gone to bed and done the math, because I know that you have to subtract out a huge amount for absentee ballots. But usually, if you come in above 56% or so, you can beat out the onslaught of absentee ballots and win. So if I had known it was 59, I would have gone to bed thinking that they won. But when I woke up, the results were reported, and I started looking into them, and the very first thing I saw was an extremely unusual discrepancy that I took a long time trying to figure out between the early votes and the election day votes. And I found this to be very, very problematic. And the more I looked into it, the more problems I saw. And I wrote those problems into an article, and I also emailed them to everybody involved in this, I think. So I don't think I need to go into them. I would like to request that you delay certifying this election until these issues are resolved, because they're really quite serious. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay. We will go ahead with our item, canvass of November 5th, 2024 general election pursuant to Idaho Code 34-1205 and 34-1206 with our clerk Locke and our elections manager, Asa Gray.
Actually, I do want to start. I first want to thank this team. I don't think people know the sheer amount of time, the last 4 weeks, this team, the elections office and the temps that we hired, and even judges and poll workers that helped us for early voting. I would say for the last 3 to 4 weeks, they've been working 12, 13-hour days. We had tremendous turnout for early voting. It was more than double than 2020. And every night, every time we had registrations, every day we had to process those and enter them to make sure our numbers match. Every night we were balancing and making sure we're accounting for every piece of paper that was out there and everything that was tabulated and everything that was in the DS300s and everything that was checked into our system against our voter registration system. So just the sheer amount of time and effort these people put in, and literally it was back-breaking labor with the amount of ballots that we had, because it was a 2-page ballot. We started opening on Monday because that's when we can open at 8 a.m. and having to open 23,366 ballots times 2. We had a tremendous team from district court, again, temps, poll workers, auditor, recorder, and elections team that had to open and continue opening on Tuesday, where we tabulated absentees not on one machine but 2 machines. And we'll go into those results posting about early voting and absentees. We did do that in May, and we'll canvass that here. But this is not the first time we've done that, so I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, commissioners. So let me just dive right into the canvas narrative here. I believe we sent you all an updated copy of this at 1 o'clock after a couple of typos were caught on one page, so you should all have that electronically, and I've also provided it to you today as well. So this is the November 5th, 2024 general election canvas. So we start off, we always, by state law, we are required to test all of our tabulators and counters prior to election day with the test deck of ballots. So myself, elections manager Asa Gray, and election supervisor Christy Olson tested all 3 DS850 digital scan ballot tabulators, which are our central count tabulators, and a DS300 precinct counter, which is what we use at early voting, on October 11th. Witnessing the test were County Clerk Jennifer Locke, County Commissioner Bruce Matari, and members of the public. Pursuant to Idaho Code, internal testing was also conducted prior to the public test to ensure every ballot style and every oval were correctly being read by the tabulators on the test deck. The DS850 machines were tested again in the morning on Election Day, November 5th, before any ballots were counted, and tested a final time in the morning on November 6th after all voted ballots were counted. Each machine report showed 100% agreement with the test deck in every test. So now I'd like to go to the public notification and turnout section. The first set of unofficial results were posted to the Idaho State results site around 10 p.m. on November 5th, 2024. These results included all of the early voting results, which were exported from the DS300 precinct counters used during early voting, and part of the absentee voting results, which were exported from one of the 2 DS850 central count tabulators that were used to count absentee ballots. As all absentee ballots had not yet been counted, we did not export both tabulators. However, we exported one tabulator to allow us to provide voters with as many results as available, and to allow us to prepare that tabulator to count Election Day precinct ballots. These results were not posted until 9:45 p.m. as the adjudication board, our team of 3 that reviews overvotes, unclear marks, and blank ballots for voter intent, had to first adjudicate those sets of ballots before we could post the results. It's worth noting that in the May primary election, we posted all absentee voting and early voting together as one set of first unofficial results for the night. Granted, in May, I will say they were a lot smaller volume because we had a lot lower turnout. We posted them all as one set to start the night. The final unofficial election results were posted online to the Idaho State results site around 7 a.m. on November 6, 2024. The unofficial precinct-by-precinct election PDF results were posted online to the Kootenai County website in the afternoon on November 6th of 2024. Including absentee and early voting totals, 97,711 votes were cast in this election. With the 12,701 Election Day and early voting registrations included, the voter turnout countywide averages to 78%. Turnout percentages varied by precinct from a low of 67% in Precinct 413 to a high of 100% in Precinct 523, where only one voter was registered. Precinct 523 was created for this election due to a court-ordered water district creation question. So that is why there was only one registered voter, because that's all that question affected. Early voted ballots and mailed-out absentee ballots that were tallied by the counting machines totaled 19,615 and 23,366 respectively. Jams on the DS300 used during early voting caused the page 2 of 3 ballots to be counted twice. I will note page 2 had the questions only on it. The ballot styles where this occurred are 308N, 315J, and 321C. Absentee ballots are run through the tabulator by precinct and then by batch, which enables us to track the exact count of ballots received. This election, all ballots except for Precinct 523 had 2 separate pages of paper, which provided an extra challenge in accounting for the absentee ballots returned. I will note precinct 523, that one voter had 3 separate pages of ballot paper. All absentee ballots, when opened, were checked for the presence of both pages 1 and 2, and any anomalies were noted. 2 absentee ballots were lacking page 1, ballot styles 313J and 510F, while 2 full ballots were rejected for the presence of 2 page 1s in one absentee envelope, and the later discovered presence of 2 page 2s in another absentee envelope. These were of ballot style 308N. The results of these are 4 page 1s not being counted. 1 additional voter returned their absentee ballot in their secrecy sleeve with no outer envelope. Because the ballot was unsigned and could not be attributed to a specific voter, it was rejected, and that was of ballot style 517F. 1 absentee ballot was misdelivered to a neighboring address, voted by someone at that address, and returned to our office, where an error was made during receiving that allowed this ballot to be accepted. The actual voter came in and voted an absentee ballot that we reissued. However, the improperly accepted ballot had already been opened and mixed in with all the other absentee ballots. We've had a conversation with the Secretary of State's office on how to account for this in our state voter system, and we're in the process of reaching out to the voter who voted the neighbor's ballot. This adds 1 to our absentee received count, and that was of ballot style 317J. 1 additional ballot was received timely on Election Day. However, due to staff error in receiving the ballot, this ballot was not counted. The error was discovered on the morning of November 6th, after all ballots had been counted and the tabulators had been cleared, and this ballot was of ballot style 509F. The result of the above accounting is that our absentee ballots counted by the tabulator is 4 fewer than our received number of 23,370 in our state voter system. I want to note that 26 absentee ballot voters did not return page 2 of their absentee ballot, which again contained only the ballot questions that were respective to their area. Not including the page 2, not including the page 2s that were set aside and the ballot that was not counted due to staff error as referenced above. Ballots cast by ballot style were matched against machine tallies and the e-poll books. There were small discrepancies on Election Day in precincts, as I will address below. And when one Election Day ballot was run through the tabulator, a voter check-in slip from the precinct ran through as well. And that's the little, if you've gone and voted either at early voting or at your polling place, that's the little slip that when you check into the e-poll book, it prints out and we show you your ballot style's this, and we compare it to your ballot to show you you're getting the correct ballot. One of those ended up with a voter's ballot, was run through the tabulator, and it covered the section of the ballot where the State Representative District 4 Seat A contest was printed on the ballot. So due to this, on that one ballot, the vote for that contest was not counted. Now I'd like to talk about our staff performance a little bit. During early voting, staff, temps, and poll workers used Ballot on Demand to print voters' ballots and used a DS300 precinct counter to receive and count the ballots. We had 19,615 ballots cast, with additional ballots spoiled by voters and reissued. Staff members performed at a high level on the DS850 tabulation machines on Election Day and night, processing ballots efficiently and properly. And I'd like to echo what Jennifer was saying about the 2-page ballots and how much added time that caused for our staff, and I know it caused added time for our voters in voting those ballots, but when we were running those Election Day ballots, we were basically running the equivalent. We were running 100,000 plus pieces of ballot paper through the machine because of the 2-page ballots. So our staff really did a very efficient job in getting those done in as timely of a fashion as we possibly could have without sacrificing our accuracy. On Election Day, one voter did not receive the ballot with the Northern Lakes fire question and called our office to inquire why this occurred. Our staff explained that our web map showed the voter residing outside the fire district boundaries, making them ineligible to vote on this question. The voter contacted the assessor's mapping department that day, and upon review, the assessor's office informed us the web map contained an error and that this voter did reside in the fire district. Election staff will be updating the voter's information in our state voter system to reflect the web map correction, and we would like to thank the assessor's mapping staff for their research and for correcting the web map. Now, please let me talk about our poll workers for a few minutes. We had over 500 poll workers working this election, and I want to publicly thank them for their hard work. Without them, we could not conduct elections in Kootenai County. most of our polling places were staffed by the poll judge that's in charge of that location, and anywhere from 6 to 9 poll workers, depending on the location. And they really, like, we had long lines, but they did their job. They did it many times without breaks hardly. They'd run and grab a sandwich and take 5 minutes and come back to their station. Like, they worked extremely hard, and we could not do this without them. Of 54,730 Election Day ballots cast, 99.99% had 0 ballot issuance errors. 64 of the 74 voting precincts had 0 ballot issuing errors. And now I will go into some of the ballot styles and then some of those errors. Precinct 313 had 4 ballot styles for this election. Precincts 301, 302, 303, 308, 309, and 323 had 3 ballot styles. 20 more precincts had 2 ballot styles, and all other precincts had 1 ballot style for this election. At early voting, one voter's address was not updated properly, resulting in the voter receiving a 512F ballot instead of the 513F ballot the voter should have received. And let me take a moment here before I read through these I'm going to describe a couple things here. The F ballot was the general ballot for that voter's location that did not contain an additional school or fire district question. So it would have been all the state or all the federal races, all of the county races, their specific legislative district, all of the soil and water and NIC trustee contests and the judges, and then the statewide questions. It would not have included a levy or a fire question. The following precincts made ballot errors on Election Day. Precinct 202 made an error when spoiling and reissuing a new ballot to a voter that resulted in the voter receiving a 202S ballot instead of a 202T ballot. The difference between those is S contained the Spirit Lake fire, T contained the Timberlake fire. Precinct 206 gave one 206K ballot voter a 206C ballot. The difference between those is K was the Kootenai School District levy, C was the Coeur d'Alene School District levy. Precinct 208 gave one 208F ballot voter a 208K ballot. Again, the difference would have been no levy question versus Kootenai School District levy. Precinct 308 gave two 308F ballot voters a 308N ballot. This again would be the difference between no levy question and a Lakeland and Northern Lakes fire ballot, questions for both of those on the ballot. Precinct 310 gave one 310N ballot voter a 310J ballot. The Northern Lakes fire question would have been present on both these ballots. The difference was Lakeland levy versus Coeur d'Alene levy. Precinct 313 gave one 313N ballot voter a 313J ballot. Again, the same 2 levies would be the difference on the N versus the J. Precinct 403 gave one 403J ballot voter a 403C ballot. The J ballot contained Northern Lakes and Coeur d'Alene, the C ballot only Coeur d'Alene. And Precinct 522 gave two 522C ballot voters a 522F ballot. Again, the difference between Coeur d'Alene levy and no question for the levies at all. None of these errors affected the outcome of any contests on the ballot. In addition to the errors made, we had several precincts have voters check into the e-poll book and then likely leave before being given a ballot to vote. This could be due to long lines to receive a ballot from the issuing clerk. We expect this is the case for all the voters listed below here, except for one voter in Precinct 303 who likely left the precinct with their ballot. The breakdown of precincts where check-ins, outnumbered ballots cast, and the difference for that precinct is as follows. Precinct 203, 7 voters. Precinct 302, 1 voter. Precinct 303, 3 voters. Precinct 322, 1 voter. Precinct 405, 1 voter. Precinct 416, 1 voter. Precinct 502, 2 voters. Precinct 514, 1 voter. And Precinct 516, 1 voter. And I will mention the reason that we can tell that it is likely they left before even receiving their ballot is that we have the physical count. We count the ballots when we send them out. When they come back, we're required to count the unused ballots, to count their spoiled ballots, and the count of ballots that was run through the tabulator. And when all the physical ballots are accounted for, and there's more check-ins than there are ballots cast, then it's obvious that some voters did not even receive a ballot to begin with because we have all the physical ballots. So I just wanted to make that clarification here. A few precincts caught errors where a voter was not given page 1 and page 2 of the ballot properly and corrected that error before the ballot was cast. Now let me talk about the myriad amount of voter registrations we had this election. Of 12,701 early voting and election day registration forms, there were 864 missing required items on the registration forms. Some registration forms contained multiple missing items, so this does not mean that 864 registrations had a missing item. Correspondence is sent by our office after each election to voters in order to complete major missing information on registration cards. It is worth noting that each of these voters still had to provide acceptable photo ID and acceptable proof of residency pursuant to Idaho code, and in most cases, the information that's missing from the registration form was entered in the e-poll book system, but was not completed on the paper form. Completed paper forms are required by state law. The items missing from the form are described as follows. Missing answer to at least 18 years old on election day question, 264. Missing date of birth, 257. Missing answer to are you a U.S. citizen question, 148. Missing answer to legal disqualifications question, 85. Missing residence time in Idaho, 48. Missing driver's license or last four of the social, 20. Missing gender, 17. Missing signature, 7. Address issues, 6. Missing affiliation, 5. Missing name, 4. Missing the voter registration form entirely, but the data entered into the poll book, we know of at least 2, and we will know the total number of any missing forms once we finish entering all 12,000 of these registration forms into our system. And another thing I like to point out about the registration forms, when we say the data is in the e-poll book, many times, even though we diligently train our poll workers, always get a completed form. But with the volume that they have at their precincts, oftentimes it's easy for a checkbox or something to be missed. And many times this voter is already a registered voter that has moved and is re-registering. So again, their information such as date of birth, driver's license number, citizenship, things like that are already on file. And those are oftentimes where we see a lot of things overlooked on the form because the poll worker is only going in and changing an address or a name change, like for a marriage. They're not going in and re-entering all the data from the form. So I like to point that out. But we still always correspond to get these forms completed. At early voting, one voter was allowed to register and vote using a Celtice mailing store address instead of where the voter should have registered. This was discovered when completing the registration process for that voter, and of course we corresponded with that voter, or will be if we have not already, I should say. So let me talk about a couple address issues with our registration. Precinct 303 registered and gave one voter a 303L ballot instead of a 303T ballot. This was due to an address being manually overridden without calling the office. The difference was a Lakeland-only ballot versus a Lakeland and Timberlake Fire ballot. Precinct 303 also registered one voter that should have voted in Precinct 302. This voter received a 303L ballot instead of a 302L ballot. Precinct 304 re-registered and gave two voters a 304L ballot instead of a 304F ballot. Again, the difference being Lakeland levy versus no levy at all. This was at the direction of the office. A parcel of land in Precinct 304 that was previously undeveloped and had 0 registered voters was found to be addressed after ballot styles were created for this election. The election manager, myself, I acknowledge that I should have checked the development status of this parcel sooner, as it was known to be a different tax code than the surrounding parcels in this precinct. Due to this, the precinct had no 304F ballot to give the voter, because this was the only parcel that was now developed that had that combination of districts, so the voter had to be given a 304L ballot. Precinct 418 registered two voters that should have voted in Precinct 419. These voters received a 418C ballot instead of a 419C ballot. Precinct 516 re-registered one voter that should have voted in Precinct 515. This voter received a 516F ballot instead of a 515F ballot. Again, none of these errors affected the outcome of any contests on the ballot. With 97,711 ballots cast in this election, our staff and our poll workers did an exemplary job processing voters and running an efficient and secure election process. There were some unusual factors in this election I would like to point out, and then after that I will go into the canvass report. Due to a court-ordered water district creation question, our office had to create a new voting precinct. Precinct 523, that only encompassed the parcels of land affected by the proposed water district. This new Precinct 523 was fully located within the boundaries of Precinct 513 and had only one voter registered. This voter did cast a ballot. In an effort to preserve the Idaho constitutional requirement for a secret ballot, the Secretary of State's office has included the vote totals from this voter in 523 within the Precinct 513 results on the Kootenai County Canvass report. Additionally, the presence of two-page ballots, as referenced above, extended the time for every process involving ballots at this election, from inventory to the issuing of ballots, the opening of absentee ballots, the counting of ballots, and canvassing the election. All processes took extended time for staff and poll workers to complete. Now, before I dive in the canvass report, I want to do what we typically do, which is give you just a short overview of the absentee ballots that were returned invalid for one reason or another, and what those reasons were. So you should have a short little sheet with those on it. I'll give you a moment to locate that. So we had a total of 236 absentee ballots returned with an invalid reason. I will go into those here. I want to point out that of those 236, 93 of them were invalid for arriving after 8 p.m. on election day. So they arrived in subsequent days. 109 of them, the signature did not match the signature on file from the voter's registration, and the voter did not come in to cure that signature. 10 of them were spoiled returned ballots. What that means is we send out our initial mailing of absentee ballots to people who requested them by that time on September 20th for this election is when we sent it. We had voters go online and re-register themselves to vote at a new address within, it could have been within a couple days after that, it could have been within the week after that, but shortly after that ballot was sent, they re-registered at a new address, which automatically spoils their ballot. If the voter then votes that ballot that was sent to them and returns it to our office, it gets a ballot code of spoiled returned. We had 3 ballots where voters signed each other's ballots, and yes, the odd number, it likely means that one voter came in to cure theirs and the other didn't in the household, or it could mean that, like, say, someone in the household signed both ballots thinking that they were signing theirs, and so we put it with that code in here. There were 14 ballots that had no signature, where the voter did not come in to sign. 6 ballots where the voter had not met all the ID requirements, typically the proof of residency requirement, required in Idaho law from when they registered to before they could vote a ballot. And then we had 1 ballot that was, it was an absentee ballot that was rejected because the voter requested us, so they got a ballot sent to them in the initial mail out. They could not find their outer envelope that they have to put the ballot in and sign, so they requested us to spoil their ballot and resend it to them. 6 days after spoiling the ballot, their initial first ballot came back with their signature on it, indicating to us they found their outer envelope and sent their ballot back. So to err on the side of the voter, we unspoiled that ballot to allow the acceptance of that. And then the day before the election, the voter sent in the second ballot we'd sent them, which is what this is that was rejected because, of course, we could not accept it. I will note, and I want to highly say I'm doing everything possible to avoid stereotyping, but this voter was at an assisted living facility, so it's very possible a month later they did not realize they'd already sent their ballot in, found that, and were like, I want to make sure this counts, and sent it in. So that second one was rejected. And again, I will note, we signature verified the first ballot, so it was actually them sending it in when they found their envelope. So that all totals, with the 93 late ballots, to 236 rejected absentees. We had one of our highest absentee return percentages of what we sent this time. I don't have an exact figure on that, but we had a very, very robust return rate. And we had several people, of course, that spoiled their absentee and voted in person at early voting or election day as well. So with that, let me dive into our Canvass report here. So our Kootenai County Canvass report, the way our Canvass reports are done now, which you saw in May, that is different from past years. We used to have an abstract template the state would send us that I would then type in all of these numbers by hand most of the time into every contest and the voting styles. Now we send a report of our results to the state, and they change it to a printable format that we present here at Canvas. And I will say we did proof these results when they came back from the state to make sure they matched exactly what we sent them, and they were exactly perfect. So the Secretary of State did a bang-up job making this printable. So with that, Jonathan, can we go to page 3, please? Sorry, not item 3, page 3 in the document. My bad. Should be the president. So one thing that is new to our canvassing due to state law is now we report here for you the overvotes and the undervotes for every contest on the ballot. So Jonathan, now that we've seen the header, if you can scroll down to two pages for me to the totals for president, it should be page 5, or at least it'll be listed as page 5 on the page. Okay, so right there you can see the total votes for president cast. So I'm not going to read every number off the screen, but I'd like to point out that on the right-hand side are the overvotes and the undervotes. So we had 35 overvotes cast for president and 828 undervotes, and an undervote means the voter did not fill in any oval on that contest. In fact, it could mean their entire ballot was blank and they just wanted voting history. But in this case, with this contest, 828 undervotes. Now, Jonathan, if we can move, please, to page number, because we're not going to read over every single thing in this document because it's 76 pages long, and I know we don't have 20 hours to read every number. If you can go to page 29, please. Oh.
There we go.
And if you'll scroll up so the whole
Yeah, the
page is
whole name,
visible
yeah.
with the names and everything, please.
Scroll, yeah.
Oh.
There you go.
So you can see this is the contest for sheriff in our county. So one of our more contested races with 4 candidates. And you can see here we had 13 overvotes and 7,976 undervotes. And then of course you can see the totals for each candidate on the ballot. And then, Jonathan, if you can scroll, please, to page number 47 for me, please. And here we have Zone 3 for the North Idaho College trustees. So you can see there were, oh, I'm sorry, I'll let the commissioners get up to 47 as well. You can see there were 10 overvotes, 17,957 undervotes, and then the 2 candidates, Durbin received 41,671, and Lyons received 38,073. Jonathan, if you'll scroll forward to page 50, please. We have Zone 4, where there were 23 overvotes, 16,225 undervotes. And then the 2 candidates respectively received 45,396 votes for Knudsen and 36,067 votes for McKenzie. And then Jonathan, if you can scroll to page 53 for me, please.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Absolutely.
So I want to make sure I understand this clearly, that for this particular race, 36,000 for one candidate, 45,000 for another, and 16,000 people just chose not to vote at all on this particular race.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and it was left blank.
Yes, it was left blank.
All right, thank you.
And so is that typical for presidential election ballots, is we have a large number of undervotes?
So we typically see the further you get down a ballot, which like you said, our presidential ballots typically are some of our longest ballots that we have. The further you get down a ballot, the more voters tend to choose to leave things blank. Additionally, many voters who only vote every 4 years show up and vote for president on the ballot. Or maybe they vote for things with a party label next to the name, but then they get further down and for whatever reason, it could be lack of knowledge, it could be just not interested, they leave more things blank. And then, Jonathan, you're on page 53 for me. If you can scroll it, perfect. So for Zone 5, you can see there were 5 overvotes, 18,063 undervotes, and then there were 40,754 votes for Havercroft and 38,889 votes for Angeletta. And Jonathan, I would like to point another one out to the commissioners that is of interest. Page 56, please, Jonathan. This is the Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor contest that was on the ballot. This was a vote for 4. So I want to point out specifically the undervotes here of 149,406. You're like, well, that's more than votes cast in the election. How can that be? Well, if I'm voter A and I go vote for 2 candidates when I can vote for up to 4, I have 2 undervotes on my ballot. So a voter who left a ballot blank for this has 4 undervotes on their ballot. And we had a lot of people that did not vote for either all 4 or did not choose to vote for anybody in this contest. Additionally, we had 340 people that overvoted this, where they filled in 5 or 6 bubbles on this contest. And our adjudication board, which is a team of 3 people that I mentioned earlier that reviews the overvotes, unclear marks, and any fully blank ballots, saw those overvotes, was able to say, yes, we can see voter intent that they were crossing this one out, they didn't want this one, or no, they literally just filled in every bubble and that's what was there. And I do want to point out that our adjudication board reviews overvotes, unclear marks, which is when someone fills in a bubble and maybe has like a dot or a hesitation mark in another bubble, and fully blank ballots. Our adjudication board does not review undervotes, or we would never get you results, because as you can see, there were 18,000 undervotes in one contest, 149,000 bubble undervotes here. Like, we could never review all the undervotes and get you results. So I just wanted to make that
I think
clarification.
it's important to clarify too, the way we do the adjudication for this, there's nothing being marked on a ballot. It's a team of 3 looking and saying what was the intent. So there is no marking of a ballot. The only time there's a marking of a ballot, we had military overseas ballots returned back to our office. We have to adjudicate those to run them through the machine. We also have a team of 3, and this is fully under camera. We put a 4th camera in last year for you guys to see after we tabulate us in the result room what we're doing for adjudication, uploading results, and the duplication board. So the only time that we're literally recreating a ballot, because it just will not run because of a tear or a military overseas ballot, and that's a team of 3, is that's when we're replicating that ballot. Otherwise, it's being done on the system and no bubbles are being filled in.
And it's a team of 3 on the adjudication
Yes.
board as well. And then Jonathan, if we can go down to page 74, please. We want to talk about our voting stats here for this election. So, and you may have to zoom out a little bit on this one, they're kind of full pages. But so, as I mentioned, we had average voter turnout of 78% counting the election day registrations in our county. So what we're required to do by statute and by the Secretary of State's office when calculating these numbers is we take our registered voter count at the cutoff of registration, which was October 11th, and then we add in all of our early voting and election day registrations. And these could be new voters, or they could be voters that moved from one part of the county to the other. We cannot distinguish between those, and by law, we're supposed to include all of them. So this is the actual registrations that were filled out at that precinct or filled out during early voting for that precinct. And then you have that adds together to get the total registered voters, and then our ballots cast from that determine the turnout percentages. So if we can scroll forward to page 76, you can see our total registration at cutoff. You can see those election day registrations added in, and you can see those ballots cast, and you can see the turnout percentage. And again, I like to point out, because those election day registrations include people who are already registered voters in our county who moved, when we get done canvassing, we will not have 125,000 registered voters in our county. We'll probably have 121,000 or 122,000, or maybe even a little bit less, but we will not actually have 125,000 voters registered in our county when we finish processing all those registrations. So with that, I have been a little bit long-winded today. So if there are any questions from the board, I will be happy to answer them.
Okay. Bill, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Bruce?
Just a couple quick questions. I was involved with the logic and accuracy test. That's open to the public, right? And obviously, you have cameras. You installed another one. Are there other components that are open to the public in the process for
Yes,
people?
so candidates and parties can have watchers. We did have one watcher for a campaign. As long as you sign up 12 days before the election, a candidate or a party can have a representation of that too, can be watchers. But we have the cameras. We currently have 18 cameras in our office. So we have it where the ballots are returned in the room, where they're opened up and inspection and then brought into the tabulating room that has a camera on it. We have one in the cage where we store the ballots, and that has a key code on it and a lock pad, I believe, on those things too. And then we have one in the result room, which we added about a year ago. We have some outside, so we have cameras throughout the whole building, and they're motion sensitive because we have so many cameras. Is when it senses motion, that's when it activates and starts filming from there.
So there's plenty of opportunities for the public to watch and participate.
Yes,
in
and
essence.
we have, and in 2020 we did the absentee opening room, so people can watch us on Monday and Tuesday open too.
Yeah,
And early voting is under camera too.
and we had a candidate, I believe, show up for our logic and accuracy just to watch that.
Yeah.
And see how that operates too. So, okay.
And talking about that, just that logic and accuracy we did that day, he talked about, we did one that had, I think, over 13,000 or 1,300 ballots and times two, that we tested every ballot style and every bubble, and we ran that through our DS 850s and the DS 300s to make sure those results, every bubble was being read, including undervotes and overvotes, and write-ins too.
I remember that.
Yes, it was a week and a half of us doing that, very
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So, do you want to do public comment or you want to vote?
Well, public comments right afterwards, so we do that and move on.
So do that and then vote? Or,
No, we can do the, I mean, unless you want to do a public comment, I'm indifferent.
no, it's,
But we should, we have an order here on the meeting agenda, and we obviously called for public comment in the beginning.
then I would take a motion.
I move that we approve the canvass of November 5, 2024 general election pursuant to Idaho Code 34-1205 and 34-1206.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. All right, public comment. Who else would like to speak today? Is there anyone else? You got to speak, so I just want to make sure that anyone else wants to speak. Okay, three more minutes.
In my report to everyone, I mentioned that there is a statistical impossibility in when the first ballots were reported because they matched the final results by less than 0.25% for all three of the trustee elections and only the trustee elections. That cannot possibly have happened by chance. It is impossible. And I think that this needs to not be ignored. And I am very disappointed that there is no elected officials who are standing up for this and asking these questions. I'm very disappointed that there is nobody from KCRCC who is standing up and asking these questions. It should not be left to a regular citizen with absolutely no backing. If the problem, I believe, is if the possibility of fraud is acknowledged, it opens up an enormous can of worms for everybody in Kootenai County. And I understand why nobody wants to face it, but it is pure cowardice to not ask the questions. And that is just questions regarding the extreme coincidence of the first reporting matching the final reportings exactly. The other thing that really needs to be explained is there's a very large, very unusual difference between the early and E-Day voting, which should not be there with such an enormous sample of early voting. And there's a great misunderstanding. People don't understand the statistics, so they have all these excuses about, well, it was a nonpartisan race. That explains why it was much closer than the partisan race, but it doesn't explain why the early voting was so different from the election day voting. And there is no known explanation for that. So these are two big, huge flags. You guys have just canvassed. Nobody's mentioned this. The election officials haven't mentioned it. The commissioners haven't mentioned it. There is no party representatives mentioning it. It's a very serious problem, and I do not appreciate nobody else stepping up. I'm afraid I can't let this drop. I wish I could. It's not something I really want to fight, but we just can't ignore this. If we don't have integrity in our systems, our election systems, we don't have a democracy. I believe President Trump will help address this.
What are you alleging happened? What are you alleging? I mean, you're saying that there was something unusual, but what are you alleging?
My understanding, could you clarify this, is that there was an ESS technician in the polling?
Yes.
Okay. It is very easy to do
You realized he never touched that EMS computer. It was Asa and a team of 3 that were adjudicating. Asa was the one uploading the results,
you know what?
not Jay.
I don't know what was there, but I think you guys owe the people of Kootenai County a written explanation of exactly what happened. I know I've been told, why don't you go talk to Jennifer, as if it's a private matter. It's not a private matter. Your response.
You never came to me.
No.
Okay, I'm
Your
gonna stop.
response
Hold on,
needs
stop.
to be directed to
Right now.
people of Kootenai County, not
I'm
me.
responding to you right
Okay.
now.
Okay, so we're going to be done with public comment now.
Commissioner
Finn-
Duncan?
Yes,
Sorry,
is somebody on the line?
We have 2 comments to be read into the record.
Okay.
Megan Carroll wrote in, I early voted the elections office and they were amazing. It was efficient, kind, and helpful staff. Very long line went through very quickly. The second comment is, it takes a village from the people who helped on election night to unload these supply boxes and open all the ballot boxes to the 532 poll workers and judges who worked at least 14 hours a day on election day, to the hardworking people who worked during early voting, to the dedicated and reliable temporary election staff, including Barb, Gloria, Randy, and Robin, who do so much behind the scenes, to various staff from several county departments, including auditor, BOCC, district court, recorder, and treasurer, who lent a helping hand to the outstanding election department staff, Angela, Asa, Christy, Debbie, and Nick. You guys rock. And to the clerk herself, Jennifer Locke, it was truly inspiring to see an elected official working alongside us, doing what needed to be done and being so accessible to the public. I'm not alone when I say I'm proud to work for her. I'd like to say thank you to all the voters in Kootenai County, especially to those 19,000 plus voters who came in for early voting. Many of you waited in line and in the rain for more than an hour. Thank you for your patience. It was greatly appreciated, and thank you for moving to see signs Rosana Santiago. That's it, Commissioner.
Thank you. Anyone on the phone? Okay. One last time, no one else.
Commissioner Duncan, if it's okay, I'd just like to make a quick comment. I know you want to get this thing going and over with. So, one of the things I appreciate with our clerk and ASA is the fact that, we have a very open system here. The public is welcome. There are some people in this room I've seen at logic and accuracy tests to see what we do, why we do it, and to answer questions. On top of that, there are plenty of opportunities for people to watch this process. I watched it personally in 2020, and this is one of the things that your office does, is it accommodates the public. You have cameras, you have opportunities for candidates' representatives to be there and watch this process. There is pre-election polling that can be done to validate numbers. I don't know if that was done. There are recount opportunities for candidates if there is an issue. What I have a problem with is when people write things online that says if votes were added electronically and kept track of how many per precinct, it would be easy to find enough ballots to fill in. That is an accusation that I find very troubling. And the fact is that we should not have to prove our innocence from someone's claims, that they should be proving that there is something that is really being done wrong. And the opportunity that people have to watch your process is so open and transparent that it's troubling to see these kind of accusations because they're corrosive. And to hear and to see writing continue on, there's closet rhinos working for the other side, and they will be the first to defend the integrity of the elections office. What that basically says is that we as a board don't do what somebody wants. We are doing something not correct and not honest and not transparent. And I find that to be very troubling when people do that. So I'm always open to listening to people. There's people in this room that know I will listen to them. And if they have genuine, valid concerns, I will be the first person to work with them. So I really appreciate what you do, and thank you.
And again, there's recount opportunities. Make it quick and non-inflammatory, please.
I mean, listening to everybody else, but no, I just wanted to get up because even Bruce talking about what's posted online, I mean, that still just feeds the fire. I think that when someone comes in here with a valid concern, they're not necessarily directing something directly at you. It could be a software.
Anyway, listen, okay.
She came up. I'm just saying, everybody,
Yeah.
we all need to just.
Sorry, I'm sensitive because I felt like it was,
Well,
I
you
can
did-
take the heat, but I felt like it was to my staff, and that's why
Well, and
I'm
but-
sensitive to it.
I think it's just not getting defensive. And
Yes,
we're
I
all,
agree.
everybody,
And I'm
we're
sorry I
all
got
like
defensive.
very passionate about everything. And just kind of bridging that gap. We all have a right to our opinions and, freedom of speech and everything, and just trying to work together. And my only thing, I don't know a lot about I know process, but I'm just saying, like, there could be a software error. I don't trust technology. I think we should go back to hand counting ballots. I know it takes a lot longer, but then you know truly what is up. Just because everybody says it's computers are, not, I don't know. Anyways, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I just want, I just feel bad because Teresa came in here and she's just really validly concerned. And I really feel like it should be heard. And I feel like everybody just shoots her down. So I just want to stand up and.
Yeah, well, there's paper ballots that can be recounted, and
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one more thing.
By
that,
hand.
so
We need to
do-
get the computers out of
So
everything.
We do have, the
We
Secretary
do.
of State does do an audit on even years. In May of 22 and November of 22, Kootenai County got picked. And it's at least, I believe, about 2,100 ballots. They'll do a few precincts up to that.
Hand count.
And it's a hand count. So they'll pick a race. So tomorrow at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. our time, right?
9 our time.
Secretary of State's going to pick 8 counties out of the whole state. And then they'll pick the precincts they're going to audit. Those are then locked up, all ballots. And then they come in and hand tally the race they choose to want to hand tally from there. But we did do that in 22 in May and 22 of November. And those results came out perfectly on there. And the other thing too, I'm going to state it, is the way our system is, there's images of all these ballots. And so if people want to request it, because I want you guys to feel comfortable what was run through those tabulators, those images are there. And you can see those races that were adjudicated. You can see voter intent. Nothing was adjusted from there. It's 3 people looking at that race and saying, what was the intent of this ballot? Is it an overvote, or did someone do a hesitation mark and then fill in the circle for a candidate? And that's what this team of 3 that does it on camera does. So I'm sorry, Teresa, for being, if she's still here, sensitive. It's just I felt like my team was being accused of certain things, and so I'm sorry that I.
Well, and that I think we're all just trying to do the right thing. So that's all.
So again, if a citizen
Talk
wants,
after. We can
yeah,
talk after.
No, I need you to publicly explain this, not tell me.
So I saw the statistics. I guess I continue on with this. I can't explain what you came up with. What I can tell you is what was uploaded for early and absentee, and then the second round of absentee, and then we must have did 5 to 6 uploads throughout the night. We are simply just uploading. We're not looking at what percentage is happening right then and there. They're adjudicating and uploading. It's constant uploading from one tabulator to that EMS computer to then the results to the Secretary of State's website. There is no time but just uploading and running those tabulations. Running the tabulators and uploading.
Somebody must have known it's a statistical impossibility for those. It can happen, it's impossible.
Okay.
Jennifer, are you going to like a Q&A attempt?
yes. I don't want to speak for you, but you've done that before, so.
We can talk after.
Yeah. All right, thank you for getting me out of here before my next meeting starts. It's 2:55, meeting adjourned.